Welcome to Maybe Star Wars. Today we are doing a book review of Star Wars Master and Apprentice by Claudia Gray. I wanted to start by giving everyone a spoiler warning. While this book has been out for a few years, it is certainly one of those must-reads for Star Wars fans, and I'd hate to ruin a fresh read for anyone who may value that. I won't be giving away every plot point, but to some extent, it will be spoiled. You're still here? Great! Let's get started. Right off the bat, one of the most enjoyable and potentially obvious details about this book is that it builds a greater context to the relationship between Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi. The book primarily falls into the timeline at about 40 BBY when Kenobi was 17. It also has some very welcome flashbacks to when Jinn was a young Padawan under Dooku and other similar flashbacks. One of the several arcs in the story is painted from the get-go when Qui-Gon and Kenobi are attempting to escape from the palace of Wanbo the Hutt. We see the pair struggling to communicate amongst themselves while getting glimpses into each character's mind. Kenobi struggles to understand why his master seems to doubt his abilities and feels like he's constantly letting Qui-Gon down, while Qui-Gon wrestles with the temptation of internally blaming Kenobi for not being more flexible in his ways of thinking and blaming himself for failing Kenobi as a master, a theme we see play out through the entirety of the story. After succeeding at escaping, Qui-Gon is asked by name to help deal with an ever-escalating sensitive political issue on the planet of Pijal. He was asked by the acting Lord Regent, Rael Averross. Rael, the former student of Count Dooku, superseded by Jinn, found that of all the Jedi, only Qui-Gon would offer a truly fresh perspective of the issue at hand. Tensions rise as Pijal moves to shift from a monarchy to a constitutional monarchy, having its soon-to-be queen, Fanry, only 14, sign a treaty moving her from absolute power and giving way to this constitution. It also would allow for a hyperspace corridor to be opened up on the planet, helping Pijal's economy. A group called the Opposition poses a threat to the treaty through means of political stunts, and is now believed to be responsible for recent acts of terror. A large company called the Zerka Corporation, a company so old that it potentially predates the Republic itself, has a vested interest in the treaty, so much so that they helped write it. With a little help from some jewel thieves that cross their path, Qui-Gon and Kenobi must get to the bottom of these attacks and find out the truth about who's behind them. And so the story begins. Some notable highlights of this book are, as mentioned earlier, we get a deeper dive into the relationship between Qui-Gon and Kenobi. I really enjoyed how Gray used the conflict between them as a means to widen the reader's perspective on who they are as people. The internal monologue we get from both characters is a huge plus for this as well. Another focus I absolutely loved was how she used flashbacks of young Qui-Gon with both Dooku and Rael to expand on his story with Jedi prophecy and what made it such a significant part of who Jinn was. I didn't mention this before, but at the beginning of the book, Qui-Gon is extended an offer from the Jedi Council to become a member, and in the midst of all the conflict externally happening, and alongside his internal conflict with himself and Kenobi, Qui-Gon is wrestling with his values and considering this offer. I found while reading that the depth and variety of character development and external affairs were well balanced. It kept my mind engaged without overdoing it. Also, every plot point was made to serve the greater story as a whole. It felt as if though I were developing right alongside each character, and I suppose we would call that good writing. Another detail that was pleasant throughout the whole story was Gray's ability to play with themes of real moral ambiguity. The story touches on slavery in such that it feels real to both Star Wars universe and our own universe, a feat that I feel honors George's way of storytelling well. We see Qui-Gon in extreme frustration when he finds out that Zerka Corporation will have unamendable, everlasting contracts due to the treaty signing. Contracts that will allow Zerka full control over Pijal's justice system and will give them the ability to punish people to a life of slavery. Slavery is something Zerka is notorious for. While it's abolished by the Republic, Zerka manages to get by on technicalities, as the Republic doesn't interfere with internal corporate affairs. That and Zerka is greatly involved in almost all Republic planets' commerce. When Jinn seeks counsel with Yoda on the matter, it sparks a debate. Yoda brings up matters of different species that interpret and experience slavery in a much different way, some even seeing it one and the same with purposeness. He challenges Qui-Gon on being the sole dictating force of morality and how affairs ought to be handled. This, of course, did not sit well with him. On the topic of moral ambiguity, another underlying tone I appreciated was the tension of not just good and evil, but what motivates our actions and how that can dictate the morality of what we do. At one point in the book, Qui-Gon stumbles into the room of Rael Averross. In doing so, he accidentally discovers an innkeeper named Selby sharing the bed with Rael. This sparks a debate between Jin and Rael on the interpretation of Jedi being forbidden to develop attachments. Qui-Gon attempts to defend his past, which Rael brought up, saying that there is a difference between falling in love and simply giving into whatever you desire. Rael in turn responds cleverly agreeing, stating that falling in love is what the Jedi Code forbids and not, I'm quoting Rael here, getting laid, as long as it's casual and it has no connection. Overall, Master and Apprentice contains some of my favorite Star Wars content ever and is certainly an easy to recommend book. The complex character arcs and perspective challenging themes mixed with beautiful Star Wars storytelling made for a fun, eventful, and inspiring adventure. While there are several other components I could go into that this book did amazing at, like the level of detail given when describing new locations, and of course the beautiful ending to the book, I want to leave some of that up for you to explore on your own. The items I did touch on though were some of my biggest takeaways from the book. I would like to leave you with the best quote in the book. So good that they put it on the back cover. In all fairness to me, I liked the quote before I noticed it was on the back of the book. Nevertheless, this is a line from Qui-Gon spoken to Averross. "It matters," Qui-Gon said quietly. "It matters which side we choose, even if there will never be more light than darkness, even if there can be no more joy in the galaxy than there is pain. For every action we undertake, for every word we speak, for every life we touch, it matters. I don't turn towards the light because it means someday I'll win some sort of cosmic game. I turn toward it because it is the light." I want to thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Maybe Star Wars. I enjoyed doing my first book review, and if you couldn't tell, I really enjoyed this book. I truly do recommend it. If you haven't read it and you're a Star Wars fan, I think you'd love it, even if you're not super deep in, rich lore. I think it expands well within a universe that's rather familiar to even more casual fans. And if you're a lover of Kenobi or Qui-Gon, or if you've just been curious about more details of Qui-Gon's character, you'll get that here. It really is a nice read, so highly, highly recommend it. Once again, thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one.